A month ago, I, 19 male, found out my mom had an affair around the time I was conceived. A few days later, my dad asked me if I'd be willing to take a DNA test. This was hard on me. Growing up, I always felt like my dad liked my brothers more than me. He would always be more interested in doing things with them. I just thought it was because they had different personalities. I never thought that it might be because I wasn't his biological son. When my dad asked for the DNA test, I told him I didn't want to do it. I don't want to know, and I don't want him to think differently of me if it turns out I'm not his biological son. He told me he wouldn't think differently of me and was ready to know the truth. I told him I didn't believe him because I felt he always liked my brothers more than me, and I asked him if it was because he didn't think I was his. He told me that this was his first time hearing that and told me that he loved us all equally. He said that he was hurt that I thought he didn't like me and never went to him about it. He said that the possibility of me not being his never left his mind, but he just couldn't connect with me or my brothers, and he apologized for making me feel that way. This didn't make me feel any better. He asked again for a DNA test, and I told him that I didn't want one and wasn't going to change my mind. When I told him that, he told me that he understood and told me to let him know if I ever did. A couple of days later, my brothers tried to confront me about it. They told me that they talked to Dad and they believed that I was being selfish. They said it's been on his mind for years and he has a right to know, and so do they. They said I should at least give my DNA sample to our dad so he can know, but I don't want to do that. I'm currently not speaking with my mom and I don't plan to anytime soon. I'm sure my brothers and dad are upset with me too. My dad is telling me he's not upset and he understands, but the way my brothers are acting, I'm not really sure. My boyfriend told me that he sees both sides but thinks my dad has a right to know and thinks I should do it because it prolongs the inevitable. I don't think I'm prolonging anything because I never want to find out. If my dad says he wouldn't change the way he'll treat me or see me, I don't think the test is necessary. Did I read that right? You've been pretty much the black sheep of the family due to questions of your paternity for your whole life so far, and Dad promised that not much will change, support, availability, connection, etc. If you test it, does it confirm his fear? My only question would be how he would react if you were his, confirmed by DNA, especially since he admits that you two didn't click due to the paternity issue, making you that second-class kid in your own house. I'd lean toward having the test if only to confirm medical histories, and if you aren't his, maybe find your bio-father. It's a lose-lose scenario either way. If you don't take the test, then your dad and siblings will assume you're not Dad's biological son. If you do take the test and he's not your dad, then your relationship may get worse, but it's going to get worse if you don't. If you take the test and he's the father, then maybe he'll apologize and your relationship will get better. Unless you resent him for forcing you to do the test. Idea: tell them that you will do it only if all of you take a DNA test. The results might be predictable, but what if they aren't? Caution: a person should only take a DNA test if they're willing to live with the results. Exactly. He hasn't been able to let go of the issue for nearly 20 years, but he swears nothing will change for you regardless of the answer. He may not know it, but he's lying. Oh, and not the idiot. It's your body, not theirs. If you're uncomfortable with what a test like that could change, then don't take it. Remind them that your dad isn't the only victim, but you are potentially the only victim who may get punished for the rest of your life for something that's not your fault. Update: am I the idiot for refusing to take a DNA test? After a lot of back and forth, I decided to go through with the DNA test. I felt pressured and just gave in. It was terrifying and I regretted doing it initially. I was scared to know what would happen if I wasn't actually my dad's. I was feeling a lot of feelings and often cried waiting for the results. When the results came in, it turned out that he was my dad. That's exactly what I wanted, but it still felt wrong in a way. I'm not sure how to explain it. I just felt and still feel sad. He said nothing would have changed, but I know things would have. I just felt he wouldn't want anything to do with me if he knew I wasn't his. Not that he has, anyway. When I originally wrote my post, I said I wouldn't talk to my mom anytime soon. I lied. I think I started talking to her about 2-ish weeks after, not exactly sure. I wanted answers and to understand her a little bit more. My mom and I are still not as close as we used to be, but not talking to her either made me sad as well, so I'm kind of in the middle. I was never close with my dad or my brothers, so when I lost that trust and connection with my mom, I really only had my boyfriend left. I would genuinely feel alone if I didn't have him. Dad has been trying, and I appreciate that in a way. He keeps trying to invite me to places and stuff. I went a few times, but I just felt out of place. He rarely did this before the test, and it's making me sad that he's doing it now. When I hang out with him, it feels forced. My boyfriend tries to tell me that I might be making it up in my head, and I might be, but I don't know how to address it with my dad. On the bright side, my family apologized to me. Both of your parents should have just gotten the testing over and done with when you were an infant or a toddler. Odds are unlikely you'll be living under their roof 24/7 for another 19 years. The old man has shot himself in the foot and missed out by not being proactive. You should ask your dad if he plans to test your siblings. Oh my goodness, yeah, he definitely should be asked this question. OP, on the bright side, you now have absolute certainty about who your parents are, which will become very important when you're older when making health decisions, determining what sort of medical screening you should engage in, etc. I'm sure this seems rather abstract at 19, but it will be very important later. Also, you just had the revelation that Dad's love is conditional. It's pretty much expected you'd have complicated feelings over that. Take your time and don't force yourself, please. I, 23 female, met my boyfriend David, 24, 2 years ago and became close with his friends. David has two best friends, Marcus, 24, and Tom, 23. They go way back to high school where they ran track together. Marcus and Tom are entirely different types of people. Marcus is more reserved, but Tom is the centre of attention at parties and really outgoing. He also has had a lot of girlfriends, but we've given up on getting to know them as he always finds some reason to break up with them a day or two later. So, a couple of weeks ago, I asked my boyfriend why I'd never seen Marcus bring around any of his girlfriends. I was surprised when he told me he'd never had a girlfriend. He also told me not to tell him I knew, as he's ashamed of it and is a very private person. This surprised me because Marcus is a handsome, athletic guy. I've also never noticed him having any trouble socially. He's good friends with many people and is easy to hang out with. I told my boyfriend this, and he said that he gets anxious when approaching women and keeps making excuses not to. So I told my boyfriend I'd tell him if I was going to try and set him up with one of my friends. I talked to a girlfriend I knew was into him and asked if she wanted to come out for drinks with the five of us the next day. Everything was going great until Tom joined us half an hour later. Tom didn't know anything about my plan, but it frustrated me that he took over the conversation and eventually left with the girl an hour later. I then sent Tom a private message telling him what I was trying to do, and he was very understanding. But the following weekend, he did it again. I tried talking to him about it, but he downplayed the situation. Eventually, I decided not to invite Tom. I invited a co-worker and we went with just the four of us. They had a great time and I made him get her Snapchat. We went out again the following weekend and she told me they'd been talking on Snapchat every day for a week and that she liked him. Eventually, with many hints from me and my boyfriend, he asked her out and they were going on their second date this weekend. So here is where I could be an idiot. Tom made a private group chat with my boyfriend and me and told us that he felt excluded for the last couple of weeks. I told him I was sorry, but he knew what we were trying to do, but he was actively messing things up. He sent me a long text telling me it wasn't his fault she liked him and that he couldn't force her to like Marcus. How uncomfortable he was with my weird obsession with trying to get Marcus laid, even to the point of excluding him. I told him that it wasn't my problem if he couldn't tone it down for one night and that I could invite whoever I wanted and I blocked him on everything. My boyfriend agrees with me, but he thinks I'm being too harsh on Tom as he's just being Tom and has no bad intentions. Now I wonder if I made a mistake. So let me get this straight. On multiple occasions you've tried to set Marcus up with women, and these women have agreed to this, and then both have left with a different dude than the one they knew they were being set up with? Girl, I think you need to recognize that you're not very good at this, LOL. The guy is a womanizer, and he gets off on the opportunities you were presenting him with, and your obsession with getting a guy laid breaks into his plans. Good job excluding him and keeping him blocked. You weren't harsh enough in my opinion. It would come off as shocking to me if he himself wasn't a problem in the other guy system that simply needed to be removed for him to flourish. Good job. I think Tom has some deep-seated self-esteem issues. The rotating door of women and the need to sabotage his less successful friend getting a date all stink of insecurity and fear of commitment to me. Also, he's a narcissist. He likes being the center of attention, so he makes sure he dominates every situation. If the attention starts to move away from him, he will do something to bring it right back to him. He runs through women and makes sure the friend has none. I'd begin to limit time with him more and more. Yesterday, my pre-tween daughter's English class was doing a group activity, and my daughter was placed in a group with 3 other people, 2 guys and another girl. They were working at a table outside of the classroom. Her teacher suddenly called one of the boys, who my daughter barely knows, who was in her group, into her office to meet privately, and when he came back he was really angry. The class just handed in a major essay the other day and the teacher believes that he plagiarized it and told him she'd be giving him a 0 and having a conference with his parents. To my knowledge, she didn't have any super specific proof, like setting off an AI detector. Her reasoning was that his writing on this essay seemed dramatically different from that of his previous essays. The boy insisted that this wasn't the case and that he wrote it all by himself. He was really angry and went on a big rant about the teacher and the situation when he returned to the group. He said some pretty nasty stuff about her, calling her a fat witch, an idiot and a stupid liar. Unbeknownst to him, the teacher was watching and listening in on this conversation the whole time. The other girl in the group expressed some agreement with the boy as he ranted, while my daughter and the other boy remained quiet and just sat and listened. This was confirmed by the teacher herself. After a few minutes of listening to him rant and complain, the teacher came out and told him he had to go to the principal's office. Near the end of the class, the teacher gave the other 3 group members, including my daughter, forms of after-school Friday detention. Even though my daughter said absolutely nothing in agreement with the boy, her teacher said she should have said something instead of just sitting and listening to him call her names. When I spoke to her principal about it, he also sided with the teacher. He said that he thinks it's unacceptable for a student to just sit idly by if they hear their classmates using offensive language about a teacher or peer, and that my daughter had a responsibility to stand up for her teacher or report it. It seems unfair and ridiculous to me that my daughter can be punished for something someone else said and did, and I don't think I'm done fighting this detention. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Hit 'em with, I think it's unacceptable for a teacher to stand idly by allowing my daughter to be exposed to such language. My daughter would never speak that way, as her teacher confirmed, and the situation made her incredibly uncomfortable. While her peers' language was inappropriate, it's not her responsibility as a student to correct that behavior. As an educator, her teacher absolutely does have that responsibility, and she chose to shirk that responsibility out of spite, forcing my daughter to listen to this for an entire class period, only to punish her at the end. I would also include that his behavior could cause a fight, flight, or freeze response, and they are, in fact, punishing her for a natural response to the situation when someone is showing signs of hostility and could take it out on her as a result. This is completely unacceptable. Also, fawning in defense of the girl agreeing with him, she needs to be excused as well. OP, I'd even go so far as to have a little sit down with the superintendent of schools for your district, assuming this is in the US. Your taxes pay the teachers. For an educator to simply cry foul and go to full whiny witch mode because the student wouldn't come to their rescue? Utter effing hogwash. My wife has had a stressful time at work and was looking forward to a vacation at her grandparents' cabin. She brought a few books she wanted to read and I brought my fishing rod. She had no plans to entertain. My dad stopped by to go fishing. It was supposed to be just my dad stopping by for the day, but somehow my mom inserted herself and I was shocked to see her. My wife had no plans to entertain her. I told my mom that. My mom bought stuff for lunch and dinner and tried to engage my wife in making dinner for us all, but my wife said no. She's relaxing and reading. If my mom wanted to cook, that's my mom's prerogative. My dad and I got back late, and at the table my mom started to complain about how she did this all herself. I looked at my wife, who just took a plate and ate in her room. My mom started to complain to me about it, and I told her she technically wasn't invited, and my wife had no expectations to entertain her in my wife's cabin while my wife is on vacation. My mom started saying, well, she wouldn't have come if she knew that. I told my mom to take the hint the next time. If you aren't invited, don't come. My parents left after dinner. My mom complained that my wife should have tried to be a gracious hostess, and I said maybe my mom should try not being an unwanted guest. Not the idiot. Bravo, husband of the year. It was rude of your mom to come uninvited with expectations of your wife without prior discussion and then complain about your wife in her house. Good on you. People who break that many boundaries, unfortunately, must be spoken to in that manner to truly get it. So you invited your dad but not your mom. How did that conversation go down? Could your dad have reasonably gotten the impression that they were both invited? Was your dad invited for dinner? You are the idiot. Once your mom showed up, you needed to make it clear to her that your wife wasn't there to entertain her. By leaving your wife to deal with your mom, you added to the situation's awkwardness. You should have done more to preserve your wife's peace before leaving with your dad. Why didn't your dad say, Hey, I was only invited fishing and I don't think they're at the cabin trying to host dinner for us. Why don't you stay home and get your nails done or something? The dad is not completely innocent in this. Both parents should have run it by the couple before having mom show up with food. You are the idiot. Next time, don't ask your dad to come either.